But we were able to do a strategic plan for photography for the museum in order that, you know, there was at least a few selected photographed objects from every corner of the collection. And that sounds really unlikely, but that was actually a tremendously difficult undertaking, because with respect to the highly talented and very much in demand museum's photography, they spent all their time photographing the same 1,000 objects. So here was a chance for us to say, right, stop. Every collection level description had, I think, 5 star objects, and each one of those star objects was photographed. And do the sums, that's quite a large collection, therefore, of photographs that represent the breadth of the collection at last, rather than simply the kind of 1,000 most photographed objects. That reminds me to say that associated with every collection level description there was a link to photographs, but there was also an opportunity, an offer of linkage, firstly to other internal resources. So in principle, again, any text, any research, any documents, anything undertaken that's shareable in the museums could be attached there. The Research Information Network report came back. If you look really closely at what that says, it's about sharing research data, not access to resources. It's research data that they're talking about. So, in principle, the museums, in theory at least, there's an institutional portal there which can be searched or browsed according to the collection level descriptions, and that's part of an invitation to engage in research. It's not just a listing of stuff we have. And then finally, about linking, if I may, the opportunity to link to external resources. And again, there are not enough of them, but there are a few examples. The archaeology records, for example, allowing direct links into the Canmore records, the archaeology, or the Royal Commission database in Edinburgh. So there's a few bits and pieces there, turning what it could be an inward-looking kind of process, actually trying to create it as part of a wider information architecture of service to a broader research community, as well as to the internal users in the museum.
So, as well as the 200 or however many word collection level description that you immediately see when you pull up a collection online, there's also an opportunity to download a larger document which links into one of the wider aspirations of the whole project, because we didn't want to just do the Navigator system in isolation. It also linked into our application for recognised status, which meant that we were doing a significant survey of the entire collection. For the first time, every single part of the collection had a statement of significance attached to it. And so the work that was done to develop these statements of significance was obviously much bigger than the small edited piece of text that appears online, but you can download that longer document, which provides additional resource.
And that contained kind of statements about research potential,
didn't it? Certainly did.
So actually, it's a research agenda across the collection, and it kind of invites, or hopefully it invites, the kind of research. Can I ask you a few questions about what's happened since? I left in 2009. I joined the DPC, and I've not looked back. But the Collection Navigator was launched, and the aspiration for people to come and visit the museum is really what it's about. It's not about online access. It's about actual access, and it's about that 2% or 98% of the city's largest fiscal asset actually being an advantage to the city rather than a drain on resources. Has that worked, Dr. Bellamy?
It's funny you should ask. I have some figures here. I mean, as William said, the aspiration was always to drive custom to Glasgow Museum's Resource Centre, and for people to take up the offer to look at the real objects. And so in the first financial year, the building opened in September, so in the first few months through to April, we had a total of 75 visitors looking at 2,700 objects. That's quite a lot, that's a big start. The following year we had 350 visitors, and they looked at 7,000 odd objects. The following year we were down to 72 visitors looking at 5,400 objects. The following year back up to 350 visitors. The following year 260 visitors looking at several thousands more objects. And then last year 127 visitors. Now, you may ask, why that fluctuation between lots of visitors and not so many visitors? Well, the truth is that as well as all of the digital information, it relies on human beings to actually operate it. And the dips that you see in the number of visitors coming through relates directly to the person whose job it is to facilitate access. It relates to her babies. Quite literally. So
it's maternity leave.
It's maternity leave.
2011 and 2012.
To facilitate, you can't just create a digital tool and hope for the best. You actually need people to service it as well, to actually realise the full potential of what we were offering. So, I mean, it's quite remarkable the kind of changes in numbers that can be directly related to maternity cover. Yes, we did try and cover the maternity leave, but with the best will in the world, there's a delay in recruitment and so on, and so there's a gap in service delivery there. So the key moving forward is to make sure that we always have a person there that can provide that human service, because the objects don't appear on their own. The inquiries don't get answered automatically by the computer. It's a real person who responds to the requests to see objects. So I think that's a really important point to make, that there's humans as well as technology required to make this whole thing work.
So what's next? I mean, if I can ask you the question, I mean, for me, the Navigator was always a bit of experimental, a bit of a kind of aspiration to say, let's have this sort of service. Obviously, collection level descriptions are relatively, again, you must kind of describe that well, like a relatively quick way to start to get us moving. But I don't think it was never the end point, was it? No,
we've done a bit of kind of evaluation over the years, and to be honest, some of the things that we thought would work quite well work okay, but actually the public want something a little bit different as well. So the whole idea of hierarchical browsing it made sense of the collection, and people do use it. It's a very useful tool, but the user's voice coming through was, we want to search the objects. There's a search capability there, but it actually searches the collection data. So if you put in, for example, I don't know, Rembrandt is the one that we were using before. It throws back not just the art collection because it's got a Rembrandt in it, but a ship model that's called Rembrandt. So the results can be a bit kind of variable, and if your search term is not very specific, you can end up with loads of collection descriptions, but you're not actually getting to the specific objects that the public think they're searching for. So there was a bit of confusion about what the public were getting, and this came through in the evaluation. So we have always had the aspiration that we'd move on beyond just the object level descriptions, and we have the 3,000 star objects. We want to move on beyond that to be able to search the entire collection. Alongside that aspiration, we got a message one day from IT, paraphrasing, I can't remember the exact terminology, but basically it said, your Navigator's broke. There was something in the software which was no longer being supported, that it was ticking over, but if something happened, it wouldn't be able to be fixed. So it still continued to tick over. And this is because it was a bespoke piece of software that was created specifically for Collections Navigator, and wasn't updated and serviced by the software creators. And so that created a slight panic, but also an opportunity. So the company which developed both the collections management system and Navigator has been taken over several times, and it's changed names several times, but it's created its own collections search software, which we kind of suspect was built on the back of Collections Navigator. We can't prove that.
That was always, they were quite explicit about it. You know, we got involved with the big software company because they wanted to explore this. They thought collection level description was the future. They were interested in all these kind of cross-searching, again, very similar to the sorts of things we've heard already. And they were quite explicit with us that they would do this. It was, I have to say, it's the softest, the cheapest bit of software contracting I've ever done, because they were basically throwing resource at it with a view to then selling it or packaging it up later.
So, as part of the Kelvin Hall project, which I'm sure you all know about, the all-encompassing Kelvin Hall project, we built into that project an upgrade of Collections Navigator, because again, the offer will be there for the collections going into Kelvin Hall, that anybody can come and see the collection, and to be able to support that, we need a fully functioning Collections Navigator.